One of the things that we've learned over the years in working on HIV/AIDS, that it's really important and it's crucial to hear from those who are directly affected, for whom these issues are extremely important. Angelo Kaggwa is a program coordinator with AVAC, the AIDS Vaccine Advocacy Coalition, a group engaged in global advocacy for HIV prevention. A Ugandan, Mr. Kaggwa promotes understanding of research in communities where voluntary medical male circumcision is often being conducted. So he's going to tell us about his own personal decision to be circumcised. Mr. Kaggwa.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, it's a great honor for me to speak before you and to tell you my story. I'm 29 years old and I'm Ugandan. And as said, I work for AVAC and I'm based in New York. For most of my life, HIV/AIDS has been real and it continues to be real. I have been a prevention research advocate for more than 9 years, and my work has often led me to learning about new strategies and promoting them before my friends, my family, and whoever cares to listen to me. And that includes voluntary medical male circumcision. I made a personal commitment to do everything I can to contribute to fighting this pandemic. And as long as I live, I'm committed to doing that. In fact, almost everything I know and have done professionally has been about HIV and AIDS. But one thing has always not made it to the top of my priority: getting circumcised. In fact, it took me 8 solid years for me to, from the first time I considered it, to finally doing it on that 26th day of June 2011. You may ask, thank you so much. You may ask, why didn't I do it? You know, I'm a solid advocate, but why not? First was the issue of pain. I fear needles. And the idea of a needle in the most delicate part of my body didn't sound that appealing. Secondly was the wound healing question. I couldn't imagine myself stuck in this room for 6 whole weeks without doing anything else. That's what I thought in my head. I later found out it's actually not true. Thirdly was the issue of cost. I had to choose between paying for my mom's medication, she's hypertensive, and going for the circumcision, because by then it wasn't free in Uganda. Or I had to choose between paying my rent or getting circumcised, and those were very hard decisions. So for 8 solid years, I kept having one reason after the other. But later I actually found out these were more of excuses than actually reasons. But the good news is that getting circumcised never left the back of my head. I always had it at the back of my mind. I knew what the evidence said. I knew what the benefits for me and for my community were. I even knew where to get circumcised. I just never got to do I never got to do the circumcision. I've been actively involved in this, as I said, for quite a while. And I knew it was the right thing to do. To me, it was even a responsibility. And finally, I decided I really have to do this. So how did it happen, you may ask? I was on a work trip in Kisumu last year, totally unaware that I was going to come back circumcised. We usually go on field trips, many of you do these field trips. So on this particular one, I was deep in Chulaimbo in Kisumu. And I wanted to get an opportunity to see somebody how does this happen? So the first man we saw rides a commuter motorcycle. So he gets out of the theater and I asked him, so what are you going to do? Tell me about all of this. He said, I'm actually going back to work. I have a family to feed. I don't think I have any other time to waste. I'm going back straight to work. I asked, really? So I got really curious and he said, yeah, I have to do this. I have to feed my kids. I asked the counselor right next to him, can I do this? I mean, is that what you do? He said, no, actually the recommended time is 3 days. But we're not going to tie this man on his bed. He has to do what he has to do. He has a family to feed. He's going to do it. Then the thought came back. I asked him, so what do I do to get circumcised? He said, you're here, we're here, let's do it. I was like, okay. I had my colleague with me, Sindra, who is actually in the audience. And she's like, are you sure you want to do this? I'm like, I think I'm ready. She's like, let's do it. So at that moment, I said, yeah, let's go. So they said, let's go. You have to do counseling and HIV testing. If you're ready to do that, we're ready to do it. And a few minutes later, I was in a counseling room. I got counseled, tested for HIV, got my results. Less than an hour after the very first conversation with that motorcycle man, I'll tell you, I was circumcised. I was a very happy man. I can't even explain to you. The counseling was very thorough. He talked about, the wound healing, about the 6 weeks I had to abstain from sex just after circumcision. He told me about how to nurse my wound. He told me about the STI identification and treatment, and the importance of involving women in a male circumcision rollout. I felt and still feel so accomplished after that day, I'll tell you. But I have to say, the story of medical male circumcision and HIV/AIDS is an African story. It's largely thanks to African scientists, many of whom are actually sitting in this room today, and the doctors and the nurses and the counselors, and even the men and women who are at risk, that we have this very effective tool today. I don't even know what. So, well.
Go ahead. Wrap it up.
1 minute. Oh, sorry about the time. So, in the end, I must say we need African leadership. We need leadership of African scientists and doctors, and I'm very honored to have our presidents and former presidents here in this room. And I'll tell you one last thing. On a recent trip to Zimbabwe and Zambia and South Africa, I met a man who actually challenged me, and that's actually Chief Mumena here, who is honored to be with us, who is taking this by the horns. He leads a community of people who traditionally don't circumcise, but he took this by the hands. And I'm very challenged, and that's why I want to mention it, because we need leadership from men like him. And I was so challenged I had to mention it, and it was a very big honor for me to meet you, and I hope we can work together. And one other thing we're doing is to call on Africans
I just need you to wrap it up, because I'm sure there are people out there with lots of questions, and perhaps you can, incorporate some of this into, your answer. What I'm going to ask you to do, don't go away. In the meantime, if you have questions for him, you should come to one of the mics in the room. There are two in front on either side of the room, and two in the back, I believe. So in the meantime, if there are those of you with questions would come forward, one of the things that I've been really curious about is exactly what happens, in that room, so to speak, because I think that's where some of the controversy arises. In other words, you're tested for HIV, I think I understand, before the procedure is performed. Do you get the results then, and is the procedure and everything, I think it sounds like it's done in the same day. And the reason I ask that is that, I think the idea is they want to discourage people who are HIV positive from having the procedure done. But aren't there challenges to that? I mean, walk us through what happens in, the counseling, a little bit of it anyway.
So for me, it took about 40 minutes from getting counseled. So I get into the counseling room. They tell me about all the things that I talked about, and they told me, what if you found out you're positive, do you still want to consider this? And they told me male circumcision has not been proven to work for male to female transmission, and I understood that. So I told them, let's get this done, and I'll make a decision, after receiving my test. And so once the test, regardless of the test, I really wanted to get circumcised anyway because of the other benefits, as Emmanuel mentioned. So once you go through that, once you receive your test, they make a decision. You make a decision with their support on whether you still want to go ahead. But it's a very informed decision. So even when the men know that after the counseling that it might not work for you if you're positive in terms of transmitting to your HIV negative partner, it's still your decision. So it takes about so as after the counseling, then the test goes on. So as you're waiting for the results, they're still going through the counseling, and once you have the results, then you go to the theater for the procedure. So it could take anywhere between 40 minutes to an hour for everything to happen.
Okay. You're a young man, and I don't see anyone there with a question, so I'll just continue. But I can imagine that for young men like you, there's a challenge because this procedure only offers partial protection. And so the question is, if you're going to have to use condoms anyway, why bother? I mean, you know, so that's essentially the question.
That's a very important.
Because you still have to use condoms.
It's a very important question, and the thing about HIV prevention is that you don't know when you're going to use the condom or you're not going to use the condom, and you don't know when the moment is going to strike. And for me to know that I'm partially protected, if that moment comes and I don't have the condom, I know I have 60% protection. So I think for me, I would rather know that regardless of whether I have the condom or I have this, I know I have an intervention for life that is 60% effective. And for me, that's the most important message. So I won't refuse to get circumcised because it doesn't work 100%, because while I wait for that intervention that works all the time, I have this one for a lifetime. Thank you so much. Oh, there's a question.
Oh, there are questions. I'm sorry. Is there someone there? Yes. Microphone. She had said
Okay.
okay, yes.
Yeah, sorry. So 8 years, that's a long time to think about it. And some of the data that Emmanuel shared was, if we looked at it more closely, it's that if we could have gotten you and 20 million other men to do this in 5 years, all of them, then it will have the biggest impact it could, because time makes a difference, okay? So what could we have said 7 years ago that you might have acted more quickly? Do you understand my question? I think you represent many men who know it's a good thing and it might help some, it's not 100%.
Yeah.
But they're reluctant, and the message that we're giving is not moving them any faster than 8 years.
Thank you. That's a good question. And I think it also has, the message is important, the delivery is important too. Because I'll tell you today, personally, I don't know how many, I've told my story many times, you know, but I have told this story personally. And today, 9 of my friends and family have become circumcised because of that. So we need to get the message out there. The delivery and who delivers it is also equally as important. So maybe the delivery wasn't, as effective. So we need to put a face to this. It's not just, get circumcised and, have all these. We need faces to this. We need to humanize HIV. We need to humanize medical male circumcision. So I think that might answer the question.
All right, there's one more very quickly. When the opportunity for questions arise, please seize them because we have to limit our time. But go
My
ahead.
question is somehow related. You're a fascinating young man. Thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you.
After the circumcision, what happened? What are you doing now? Exactly like you say, because the kind of voice from you is going to influence so many young men. What have you done after the circumcision, after the pain has gone?
So what have I...
In terms of getting the message out? Okay.
So that's a good question, and it leads me to this slide. So we have an opportunity, we have an opportunity for Africans to tell the truth about male circumcision. We want to get thousands of these, we have thousands of men who are circumcised, but the message isn't getting across. So we have this social media that we're using, because every young man today almost is on Facebook. So we're using this social media to get hundreds, and now we have hundreds of Africans who have signed up. We're using this, and then we have them in country, so we're forming some kind of coalition to get messages like mine, to get voices like mine told in Mozambique, in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, and all the places where we need this message to go. So this is one of the things I'm doing. So if you want to sign up, we actually have information at the back. Come join us. We want to tell the truth. We want to tell the world that this is our intervention, this is our contribution. We have to make a difference. The next generation counts on us. So I thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'll be right here. So, God bless you.